You are listening to the Global CTE podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisholm.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Global CTE podcast. I am your host, Sylvester Chisholm. This is the place where we like to wrap a blanket of goodwill around the CTE community and highlight the best, the brightest, the movers, the shakers, the innovators. Today is no different. I have my good friend, Don Wettrick, here on the podcast. Let me tell you about Don. Don is the founder of Started Up Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to foster innovation and entrepreneurship for youth. He is also the author of Pure Genius, Building a Culture of Innovation, and the host of the Started Up podcast. Don is known for his award-winning work as a middle school and high school teacher, educational and innovation consultant, and a top-ranked education speaker. Don, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
My pleasure. Excited to be here. Like, really excited to be here.
Man, awesome. So, through a mutual friend, I'm having a conversation with the good buddy Peter, who is on the Durable Skills Education Advisory Board with me, and he's like, "Man, you have to meet Don. You have to meet Don." He's going on and on. So I started researching. I said, "Don, I got to get you on the podcast to share this work that you're doing. You're really making a big impact locally, globally." So before we get into all that cool stuff, what's the origin story, man? How do you get here?
Two things I always love to revisit because I just always remember it. Number one, the first thing I really did to get here is as I listened to my dad. So my parents paid for all of my education, and my first job wasn't in education. But my dad was an educator. And after 3 years, and I'm not going to say what occupation it was because I don't want to disparage it, but I told him, I'm like, hey, I think I want to go back to school. And I wasn't asking for money. I appreciated the fact that they paid for my first degree. But when I told him that, he took this deep breath, and my dad's very positive man, doesn't complain, like eerily doesn't complain about anything. Mm-hmm. And he said, Donnie, I don't care if you teach for the next 20 years. Just promise me you won't be the teacher that teaches 1 year 20 times. And that always gave me a fresh perspective that I didn't really know what he's talking about until year 2 and then year 3. And then I got it. Constantly reinvent, constantly make sure you're pushing out what didn't work and enhancing what does. And secondly, really how I got here on this side is what a friend of mine sent me a TED Talk. That was over 10 years ago. Maybe more at this point. And it said, you got to watch this. And it was a TED Talk from Dan Pink. And if you haven't watched it, everybody should, but it was on what motivates people. And they talked more famously about what is now referred to as Genius Hour, 20% time. It was really through the lens of Atlassian or Google. But I watched that. Again, there was no 20% time yet in schools at all. I think Daniel Pink is the godfather of all of this. And so
I agree.
I was like, why don't I start that? And so I started it as a thing in April, which nothing gets done after spring break, but I tried it anyway, and it worked well. Long story short, I ended up writing a class description called Innovation and Open Source Learning. And the reason why it got taken seriously is that our administration, Dan endorsed it. Matter of fact, Dan a couple times got on a Skype call and wow, talked to our kids. And really that kind of leverage and that support helped it get pushed over. And then that led to a lot. I mean, like literally the open source learning part of it. We end up talking to amazing, like iconic people. Like it got weird. Okay. Matter of fact, okay. I even would have I had shared this chapter of a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. There's a guy named Tim Ferriss who challenged at the time college students of like, who would you want to interview? And so and our kids were pretty aggressive. And so we were going out and using the power of especially of Twitter and LinkedIn to get people, like amazing people, calling into the classroom. And then ironically enough, other than Dan being on our class, we got Tim to do it as well. And then having Tim do that and then showcasing that led to a lot of people. I think probably the one that about broke our school's internet, we had this is dating myself, like how back this goes, but there was this video game streamer called Ninja. He did some stuff with us, and that about broke our school servers. But no, it was things like that on how we open sourced it that got us a lot of attention. that then led to me finishing my book. The book did better than I thought. And then this foundation then was our state reached out and said, hey, what you've done for this school or your class, could we do for the rest of the state and bigger? And so they asked us to possibly start this movement. And I don't even want to say to create a competition. It was really to create ecosystems throughout the state and not just one or two schools. And since then, we've grown exponentially. We serve several thousand students now. It's gotten out of control. And what I love, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but a lot of times youth Shark Tanks things, a lot of times are, I have a really big idea and we applaud them. And that is so stunning. And that is so brave. And you're so awesome for thinking of this. We've pushed a lot on practicality that you can start this at least as a minimum viable product level. And so we just completed our like 7th year. And for the 3rd year in a row, some of the contestants get venture funding beyond the prize money. And that's crazy.
Impressive, man. That's so impressive. Listen, right now, I know all the listeners' minds are blown right now as they think about like how are you getting these people into the classroom, like Ninja, Dan Pink, Tim Ferriss. So like, okay, let's go tactical on that really quickly.
Yeah,
strategy to get guests in your classroom. Like, what was the strategy?
The strategy was the story of the class. Here's what I'll give you 2 stories. I'll give you how we got Tim to convert, and then I'll give you exactly why other people are like, "Are you serious?" Number one, by the way, not everybody was a yes.
Right.
But one of my kids. So again, part of our blueprint was we read what Tim had told the students. Again, I forget which chapter it is, but it's definitely in 4-Hour Workweek. Okay. And also it didn't hurt because I had a couple other big breaks. Right. I was on a show that had a decent follower. And so that's when I got my blue check mark. So sometimes having a blue check mark helps. And this was in the day when you had to earn it. That all being said, we put this thing out. So like sometimes sometimes the kid would make the ask on LinkedIn or Twitter, and then sometimes we'd all pool together. So we'd have this thing we called a thunderclap, right? So if I tweeted it, I immediately had 30 retweets. Well, that gets attention. And other people that follow them, their friends might retweet it or like it or whatever. So that helps. The other thing though is that they got Tim. He wasn't responding. We'd made a couple tweets. And so a couple of these girls go and I go, I got it. And they said, take a picture of us and make this tweet. Hey, at T Ferriss, our students are so upset that they've taken your advice and you're not getting back to them. And so I took this picture. They're going, like, they're making like really sad. And of course, they all retweet it. And I'm telling you, within maybe, and Tim, if you're listening to this, thank you. Although he knows how much we appreciate it. Like 5 minutes later, I'm in class and I get a notification. Tim Ferriss has followed you. No way. 60 seconds later, DM says, haha, you got me. Can we talk tomorrow? And so I love that moment because the students were like, well, first of all, I like the fact that I had students that thought Tim Ferriss, like they weren't going after Ariana Grande. They were going after Tim Ferriss. No offense to Ariana Grande.
Right.
But they understood that the possible was possible if you had a mission that matters and you also strategized it. Secondly, they also understood social pressure. I had 3 students going, we've taken your advice. And then the other part of it is just other than Tim Ferriss, they had a high success rate on people that they found interesting. Yeah. And so sometimes they're like, just the story of the class was like, hey, at said person. So I'm in this class called Innovation and Open Source Learning. And our teacher has instructed us to also open source our learning and learn from really great, successful people like you. Yeah. Could I have 15 minutes of your time on a back then it was Skype, on a Skype call? Well, if you hear that from somebody who goes, hey man, you're awesome, can I talk to you? You're at least intrigued that that's a class. Yeah. Like this exists.
Yeah, it's the class, and it's the class that we all would want to be in. We're like, how come I didn't have that class?
And that's what they said. And by the way, almost everything I've built, Sylvester, in the last
Okay.
5 years is what I wanted 5, 10 years ago.
I love
Like
that.
we now have a teacher fellowship, and I'm
Okay.
giving them the things that I wanted more than anything. And
Yeah.
so like that was the strategy. And then also then there's like sub strategies of like, hey, I've always wanted to talk to, I'm just being hyperbolic here, but I'm using this as an
Okay.
example because we sure as heck didn't talk to Michael Jordan. But like, I've always wanted to talk to Michael Jordan. That's going to be hard. But if you do a little research and you find out who one of his trainers was,
You
if
might.
you want to understand work ethic and what it took, no
Yeah.
one's no one knows who his trainer is. And his athletic trainer or his strength coach or whatever, like I'd love to tell those stories.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
giving that person to give back. And then lastly, successful people gravitate to successful people.
Yeah.
This was a group of people that were like our theme, and that's why if you ever look at our stuff, our mission is see a problem as an opportunity.
Hmm.
My students were not allowed to complain. They were allowed to reframe it as, oh, okay. Like there's the world's filled with opportunities. Normally we see them as things that piss you off online. Oh man,
Hmm.
somebody had to do something about that. You should.
Hmm.
All entrepreneurs do is listen to people complain. I shouldn't say all, but like the majority of them solve problems. I'm
Yeah.
bored and don't want to go out for a movie. Netflix. I don't want to go get my groceries. Amazon. I mean, like it's just so
Yeah.
once they're locked in like that, then all of a sudden they started to want to talk to those people. And it's the reason why we listen to podcasts and read books. It's your shortcut.
Yeah.
Hey,
Absolutely.
took you 30 years
Absolutely,
to build
Don.
this business. Could you tell me in 4 1 hour interviews, and can I learn from that? Like students started buying into that.
Man, you hit the nail on the head. Whenever I'm talking to educators about entrepreneurship or students, like I want to start a business. I don't know where to start. What problems do you care about? Every business has to solve a problem. When you simplify it like that, it's like, now here's a problem you care about. Are there 100 other people that may care about this same problem, that have this problem? Now, where can you find them? Then now we have
Right.
we may have something here.
And working past the copycat stuff.
Yeah.
Like we this
Talk
year
about that,
in our
Don. Talk about
curriculum
that. Talk about that. Talk about that.
snarkily put like, and I didn't want to be a jerk, but we said, hey, for this year's competition, no more food trucks unless you're solving a problem. And we had one student that said in his proposal, and so a lot of times, because we have a massive amount of proposals, you have to submit a 3 minute video and then a
Mhm.
lean canvas and a business model. And like but the first thing that we look at is the video. And the kid goes, I know what you're thinking. You said no food trucks, but I did a data survey and I looked at this zip code. And in this zip code, they all like the demand is there. And in this zip code, they want street tacos or Korean barbecue. And because the costs are low, and because he had things broken down on what the truck would run, the profit margins, I'm like, there's a lot of other kids. I'm going to start a food truck. Why? Because I don't know, they're cool. What do you want to serve? I don't know, like burgers and stuff. You're not solving a problem.
Yeah.
You're going with the trend that seems cool and you have no idea. We've got some students, not all. We
Okay.
had 3,000 plus this year, not all, but the ones that move on are like, I'm solving a problem.
I love it. And I love that kid who did the research and who pushed and challenged you with his passion
Yes.
and did the research. That's
Yes.
why I love that. Just for clarity, so people understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the innovate within
Yeah.
competition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you break that down? Like how that works across the state of Indiana? Is that correct?
Yeah. I will tell the story as it is now, not what it was. Well, actually, no, I should start what it was. What it was, first of all, when this started, the state asked me to be a behind the scenes helper, which was odd because I also had my own class, but they also knew that my students would participate. So it started off with just word of mouth. And we did some marketing, but it was mostly word of mouth. What it eventually became is we saw some teachers who were very passionate about it. They started to have good programs. Then the students were sharing it. But the next threshold we covered was this competition was really good for suburban schools or schools that had an entrepreneurship class, which is not very many schools. So then we end up doing free curriculum, and that that tilted the scales very quickly. Matter of fact, our fastest, actually, not even our fastest growing, our biggest area of participation is Lake County, Indiana, which some people also might know as Gary, Indiana,
Okay.
which some people might not have good associations with that. But I think that was the exciting part, is that once kids that normally weren't in the conversation of entrepreneurship, we did curriculum, was easy to understand, and have that see a problem as an opportunity. Man, they had a lot of problems they wanted to solve.
Right.
So now it's this juggernaut that we have found teachers all over the state. I'll get more into the teacher fellowship in a second, but
Okay, go
those
ahead.
teachers are usually the conduit to where it grows. Then the schools that are tired of hearing how great they are at this competition start going, what's going on over there? And then they grow. So it is still a lot, like we don't do that much marketing, but they have almost the entire first semester to refine, pivot, change. We don't want you to have an idea and slap it on paper and expect to be good. We want you to try, if say that like you want to do an event, host an event of 10 people, get feedback. Because
Yeah.
that way, and then by the way, we still get some kids, just like, when you write that research paper the night before it's due, we still have some students you can tell like they submitted this last night. But
Right, right.
the ones that are especially were with teachers that are leading this charge are doing that. They're taking a couple of months to do it. Now, that being said, we have homeschoolers do this. We have students that just found this on their own with no teacher help. Um, but the most successful ones are the ones that have teachers inside the building. And by the way, it doesn't matter what they teach. It never does.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a business teacher. Actually, I'd say, to be fair, we've probably got more non-business teachers in this than anything.
I'm okay. Stop right there for a second, Don. Like, what other classes? Because I personally truly believe entrepreneurship is the connector of all curriculums, right? Of all fields of
Yes.
studies. It is
Yes.
so interdisciplinary. So I'm curious, like what are some of the other teachers that
I'm going to
classes?
go hyper cliche just to make a point. So to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, that how more cliche could you get? Let's just go down. Probably our most dominant is engineering.
Okay.
Because if you've designed something, matter of fact, I love it when kids are in robotics competitions. I'm like, that thing you just built, what sort of business application is on there? Kids that know how to build a lot of times don't know how to sell.
Yeah.
If you can give them some like, or even have, by the way, we pay more if you have a team. So we've
Yeah.
incentivized the kid that is a really big fan of Gary Vee to be with the kid that is really going to be working for SpaceX soon, and like getting them to be a team. But engineering usually has working prototypes. Sometimes that's how to build a better mousetrap, all the way to we had a student finalist last year. It's a team of three, and their problem was their mom had she was wheelchair bound, and they had done a study that motorized wheelchairs are damaged often on airplanes. So they had basically an onboarding and packaging thing that they worked with Southwest Airlines and Indianapolis International Airport. They solved
That's
their mom's
incredible.
problems. Then we've got English class, right? English class, a lot of times they would think of great events, maybe a poetry slam, maybe a community garden, a lot of times civic minded things. Same thing with the government class. Well, I don't know, every state calls it different. Family and consumer science,
Yeah.
a better spatula. And again, hyper cliche here, but like within this, like somebody, like I hate it when the thing does the thing, and like why don't we have a spatula like SpongeBob has? And I'm again being hyperbolic here, but like with every genre, there was an opportunity to find something there, whether it was an event, a service, an app, um, an engineered product. All of them, it worked.
Man, that's awesome. Man. So talk to me about the teacher fellowship. Like
That
what's
was
that look like in terms of
um,
and the reason I really want you to touch on this, Don, because someone listening is like, wow, but my district is so prohibitive of me being innovative, or I have to teach this, how do I innovate within that? So I know you have something for that.
By the way, thank you for saying innovate within that. Kudos, whether you meant it or not. So the teacher fellowship was probably my favorite thing that I've ever done within this organization.
Mm-hmm.
One, because I was just looking at the obvious and looking at the data. We kept seeing schools that were really good at this competition. It wasn't a school, it was a teacher. It was a single teacher. And I start building for them what I wanted, a couple years ago. One, we raise money to pay teachers more. Like I get a stipend that we're trying to make it bigger, but I give them a bump in pay. Two, they should have a direct bat phone to their mayor. Because what great teachers do, and this is a soundbite moment I want everybody to walk away with. Great teachers are economic development. Full stop. They're economic development. You know what that kid like, and that mayor is like, I saw what she did. I need to hold on to her. And that teacher is the one leading that charge. Three, when that teacher realizes that she or he is that high in demand, they might leave. So I wanted to do this for talent retention. We need our best teachers leading that charge. And so with the culmination of them being invited to city county meetings, chamber of commerce meetings, the mayor getting their feedback, that teacher opening up their classroom to listen, like have the mayor listen to some of their ideas was the first thing I wanted. Yes, they're great conduits of our program. Yes, they get more pitches than any other kind of school or other teacher, but it's literally making sure that we celebritize great teachers. I'm actually still trying to raise more money so we can up the stipend. To keep them, retain them, because they are the conduit. They are the Pied Piper of innovation talent. And wow. we've got a thing we're going to be rolling out later this year that I can't talk about yet. That is easily going to be our biggest thing. It'll be national newsworthy. I promise you. But it's been life-giving. Oh, and by the way, then we have these crazy travel opportunities.
Talk to me about the travel opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah. So the teachers that are in our program, not all, but we definitely have some opportunities that if they're going above and beyond, they can go on some of these travel opportunities. Part of the prize package, if you're in the high school, is that we every year deliberately go to another city, not in Indiana. People are like, I don't get that. Why? If you're trying to, and by the way, I'm not like completely government funded. We do not take our marching orders from the state. I just like to, I like to keep our best people. But we do that because we want to show the kids the grass is green and you can collaborate with those people. But the fact that you've done all these things here and you've collaborated with your local chamber of commerce and everything else, the chances of you staying high. So every year we go to a different city. And ironically enough, we introduce them, dude, every city we go to, it's A-list. Matter of fact, the first year we went, it got an article about it in Forbes because the kids all got feedback from Seth Godin. And for those who don't know what Seth Godin is, I promise you that's a big deal. Yeah. And so we always need teachers to go on that too. Right. And what I love is the teachers go to that, take a bunch of ideas and come back to school and say, I met this person. Sometimes they Skype call them, whatever. And then lastly, we got this really crazy program that we travel internationally. We can go into that another time, but there's been a lot of desire to grow this outside the country. And so we take teachers on those opportunities.
Man, that's awesome. You're really doing the work. You're making a big impact. And I love that you said too, you're creating the things and innovating the things that you wanted to see that did not exist. And now these educators and students are having this opportunity. I'm going to stay international here for a second. I see you have your McLaren hat on. And I also noticed that on your LinkedIn, I think I saw you went to the Formula E in London. Is that correct? Yeah. Did I see that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious what type of entrepreneurial inspiration did you come back with from Formula E?
Probably shouldn't give free product placement. So I'll explain at least why, because that actually plays into why we did some of this international travel. So
Okay.
I'm for those who you don't know, I'm located in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is a really big little city, and a lot of it revolves around motorsports. So to do things within the autosport industry here is motorsport industry is not difficult. And so one of our collaborators was this really great company that too many people have not heard of, and it's called Dallara. And Dallara, in a lot of ways, is the R&D for a lot of the Italian car companies that end in I.
Hmm.
Maserati, Pagani, Ferrari, Lamborghini. They're the quiet. They make a lot of carbon fiber wings. They make a lot of design, and they're deliberately quiet because they cross pollinate with a lot of the other companies that sometimes are in competition with one another. But they also make every single Indy car. So when you see an Indy
Oh,
car, it
wow.
was made by Dallara. Anyway, they met some of our students, and so they were like, their owner was like that. It was really partly his idea to get students out of the country, and he wanted them to come to Italy. So for the last 2 years, we've gone out to like Lamborghini, Ferrari headquarters, and because if you're under the banner of like Mr. Dallara is like I shouldn't say this. I hope it doesn't sound derogatory, but like he's the benevolent godfather. He's like when if in people on the inside know that Dallara is this awesome company, an awesome man. He's a really kind, humble man, but he was why I went out there, and so they're also very supportive of Formula E. Again, they make all the cars, all the bodies, and so it was by chance that I was in London because we're setting up some more things for international opportunities, and it was that same week that
Yeah.
Formula E was there. So in some ways that wasn't planned, that was by chance. But yeah, I mean, even on the Formula E side, I think it's exciting. If you saw those videos, it has the weirdest sound. They don't
Yeah.
sound like race cars. They sound like, yeah, I don't know what they sound like.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know what they sound like, but I was glued in on the video. I'm like, wow, this is
Yep.
something. But you're saying some your students get a chance to go to Italy to visit the factories. That's impressive. What are
Among
some
other things. Yeah.
when they get? I'm curious. Like, I believe international travel is one of the best learning opportunities, right? So,
Yes.
like, it's what was some of the feedback from the kids like when they have that experience? I'm curious. Like, what are they saying when they come back?
I shouldn't lead with the non-innovative side. They couldn't believe the difference in food. And I'm not talking about in
Okay.
taste. All of us experienced this when we got back. Um, like, I think it's funny. We all lost weight. We ate more and we all lost weight.
Yeah.
And when the kids got back, they're like, they noticed differences in their digestive patterns. So we noticed the difference between quality food. And I shouldn't say we went for innovation. We came back with knowledge of food. But one, Italian culture is different. How they use the design process, how they're meticulous on details, but also they have this really strange, and I'm just giving you what I saw with some of the students we're talking about. They have a different work hard, play hard mentality. A lot of times they have a 2 hour lunch break,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not that uncommon for them to work until 8 p.m. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're saying fast cars and slow food. Dinners were really long, lunches were really long, and their cars are very fast. But we also got to, see other entrepreneurial journeys. I think it was cool. If I didn't know until a couple years ago what a Pagani was, oh,
Okay.
Paganis are a more expensive Ferrari. And they met the founder Horatio Pagani, and he was even talking about his journey. He was from Argentina and deliberately moved to Italy to want
Okay.
to be a part of the car culture. And they only make maximum like 55 cars a year, but they're worth millions. But like listening to this man's journey of you got to be in the right culture sometimes to be in the right mindset. So he's like, I wasn't going to build this company in Argentina. No offense to Argentina, but he's like, I wanted to be there. And I just think these stories of innovation and change. Also, because we're in Italy, we decided to like do a understanding of what it takes to and the quality and the time it takes to make Parmigiano Reggiano. So cheese. but we wanted to understand innovation and entrepreneurship and cheese. So it was more than just motorsports, but the catalyst was motorsports at first.
Man, that's awesome, man. I'm just enjoying all of these stories. You're painting so many vivid pictures here. A common theme keeps coming up: passion. And I can hear the passion in your voice for all of your work. You're trying to help students unlock their passion. Talk to me about entrepreneurship and the Japanese philosophy of Ikigai.
Did you see that was the theme of my TED Talk?
I did.
Okay. I was
Yes.
like, that was really well timed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
that whole Ikigai thing is, and please look it up on the Venn diagram, but basically what you're good at, what you're passionate about, if you can make money out of it, like inside that, because like what you're good at and what you enjoy is a hobby. What you can make money at is an occupation. Like there's so many factors, but if you can find something that you truly love, you can somehow make a living out of it. Which, by the way, I think it's funny that you can monetize podcasts. Like you can have a fun time talking to people you like and make money. That's crazy, but that's the Ikigai thing. And that is one of the reasons why I liked the whole Genius Hour thing. Now, I think it's a starter kit. I think, at the high school level, at least I wanted it to be its own time. I wanted to be its own dedicated space. But even as adults, right? So I just know so many people that call it the golden handcuffs, that you may be paid well and you dread Monday morning. I'm trying to get students started earlier with what are you curious about? What are you sometimes I don't like the word passion as much because it seems like that's a word that fizzles out. You're passionate when you meet your girlfriend years ago, but something you're committed to, something that you really want to get into, it overtakes passion. It takes it's that drive, it's that internal. So that's one of the things that why we repackage what we're doing by see a problem as an opportunity. Because if you think it's a problem, you think it needs fixed. And if you think it needs fixed, you're going to see it through. And that to me is the catalyst is getting that mindset right, having some space and capacity within our schools, and then follow up. I think I also had this really bizarre, perfect time, perfect place. A lot of this started, I was teaching broadcasting and video editing years ago. And it was right at the time where people are like, YouTube's going to start like paying people. And we're at the right time, right place, because all of a sudden it didn't matter. It occurred to me of like, some of these students have worked their butt off, made this mini documentary, and I'm grading it, and that's it. They produced this for an audience of one. And all of a sudden, when YouTube really became a thing, if Mr. Wettrick gave this a C because he didn't like your angles, your audio was off, but it has 5,000 views, and the kid that got an A has 5.
Right.
Who's
right? Right. Who's right? Let the people decide.
Right. But I love that ability for them to pick up a camera, or nowadays just pick up your phone because the camera is on. Amazing. And pursue that. And
let me ask you something, Don, on that. So we have so many kids that have been trained, like just the way the school system works. They're trained to think about that grade versus think about the things they're curious about or their passion. How would you advise teachers or educators to move more of that Ikigai philosophy, helping kids uncover their passions to find later success in the classroom? Like, how you have any tips or strategies on that?
Yeah, have at least some time for a Genius Hour project.
Yeah.
I mean, or ask yourself, I'll go back, and I've said this quote so many times that I probably should ask for permission at this time from Seth, but I think it was in Linchpin from Seth Godin. And I'm going to paraphrase it and break it down, but basically he said, education can be boiled down to 2 things: solving interesting problems and the leadership to get it done. What you just assigned, is it solving an interesting problem? Well, it's solving for X. What can X represent? Um, because if what you're assigning is just because you have to, bring some relevance to it, or at least the student bring its relevance. I know that's hard. Because like, well, I can't do that with this curriculum and the state is making me do that. Fine. Then give 20 minutes on a Friday of opening things up. Now, the sooner you can do that, the better. In kindergarten, we call it show and tell, right? So we just need to extend that to second and third grade and allow students to go, this is something I truly love. And so when that kid's doing a show and tell, you're like, what other things could you do with that?
Yeah.
You know, could you have an event around your favorite toy? What other, if you could add an accessory to your toy, what would it be? They'll have no problems coming up with ideas on the spot. We lose that after third grade.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Two final questions. One, if someone's in another state, they're listening to this, they're curious, they're like, you know what? I've had a similar idea. What would you tell them to get started to try to organize schools in their state to do something like what you're doing?
That would, for me to comprehensively answer that, it would take another hour. I'd say starter kit. Well, first of all, let me know how I can help. Sometimes you advocating is, by the way, I went through this. It took me, and I'm not saying this to be mean, it took me to leave the country to do some things in Europe. And when I got back, I got the, well, why aren't you doing that here? I've been trying. External validation. So,
Yeah.
like, if I can be a help, I will call your superintendent and go, do you see what she's doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome. You're supporting that, right?
Yeah.
External validation works. Whether you like it or not, so does politics. Full disclosure, we have just as many Democrats as Republicans loving this in the state. So if your mayor sees that what you're doing is like, whoa, you're going to possibly help me retain talent. Okay. And if your local mayor is going into your classroom, your superintendent's going to like it. And if they don't, you're at the wrong school. And that school next down the street is going to see that. You'll be fine.
Don, you know something I hear sometimes about entrepreneurship education. Sometimes I feel like the pushback, the admin, they don't understand that yes, it's an entrepreneurship class or something like that, but the outcomes. Can you talk a little about that for those that participate in Innovate Within, like that go through your programming, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be entrepreneurs, but how does it help them in their future careers or that sort of thing?
So this is a great question because a lot of times, so we also now get corporate support. And at first it was like, sometimes the question was, why do I want to support people that want to start their own businesses? I want them to come to work at company X. First of all, the amount of people that will become entrepreneurs is less than 10%. So what do you do with the 90%? You allow them to think like entrepreneurs. How many people go to work and demand their smoke break? And they love to talk about what sucks within their organization. What we're trying to do is to see a problem as an opportunity. There was a story back in the 80s, and I think it may have been United Airlines or maybe TWA or an airline is defunct. But this lady, and by the way, kids, they used to actually serve real meals on flights. But this lady figured out that an olive in the salad that seemingly that no one was eating, if they eliminated the olive, it was going to save the airline thousands and thousands of dollars. And in the 80s, that was a big deal. She reported that. It got sent up the food chain, and they were like, we'll eliminate the olives. Did that woman get a $500,000 raise? No, she did not. Did she get a promotion? I'm sure she did. She was valuable to her company because she took ownership of it and said, we should do something. She could have just complained of all of her other employees. This is stupid. This airline is dumb. I hope they go under because they have olives. No, 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 no. So that mindset of seeing a problem as an opportunity is the thing. And to all those people that are like, well, you know, she saved the company. No, she didn't. She helped them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And also at the same time, well, if she's that great, she should start her own company. Do it. But entrepreneurship is very hard. It is very lonely. It is not for everybody. This is why it's under 10% of us who love banging your head against the wall. So if you think like one, you are so valuable. And you're like, well, it's unfair if you make your person that started it millions of dollars. Start your own. Or, by the way, the people that are really valuable, they get paid a lot more.
Absolutely. Well said, Don. Last question. The future of career tech education. What is your vision, or what would you like to see for the future of CTE?
First of all, I'd like to, and I'm totally pandering to you, but this is something I believe because my dad was an industrial arts teacher, mechanical
Okay.
drafting, engineer, like those kind of things. First of all, like, let's get back to taking it seriously again. People that can build are in high demand. Well, AI is not taking over a lot of things you guys are doing in CTE. And actually, some of the things you were doing in CTE also is under the banner of how to build better AI tools. So first of all, let's take it more seriously. Get our guidance department. I love them. My dad also, when ironically enough, in the late 80s, when they started phasing out a lot of the industrial tech programs, they put him in the counseling department, which broke his heart even more. He didn't complain about it, but as schools were phasing out of this, there was this, all of a sudden we went through this little wave of good kids take philosophy courses, and we devalued what is now a lot of CTE. So A, take it more seriously. B, have CTE people listen to industry experts. Skate to the puck, not where the puck is. If we do that, then now all of a sudden CTE courses and teachers are the hub of innovation. And then the other departments are going to have to catch up because the economy is the economy. And traditional universities are facing this now. Enrollment's way down, but not in the areas that are trending up. And the areas that are trending up are really the feeder system with CTE. So take pride, CTE people. Your day is here. Sometimes the buzz hasn't caught up yet, but it will. So treat yourselves with dignity, respect, flex a little bit, and put out those fires of parents. They're like, well, and I'm not trying to be dismissive of some of the fluffy, high academic classes. I am. I'm doing this thing with my hand for those of you listening. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but like the I want there to be this pride in the sense that my kids are taking these classes and they've already got their certifications in X, Y, and Z. But I think that, by the way, that opinion is already changing. Well, my kid's going to a really expensive college where they don't know what their major is yet. Well, that's cool. My kid's a diesel mechanic and making this. I mean, I want that to be cool again, please.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. That's that shift in the narrative is happening slowly, but that is the change that we need to see, man. Thanks so much, Don, for taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy. If people want to get in contact with you, they want to learn more about Innovate Within or the work that you're doing, or bring you in for a keynote speech, how do we connect with you?
So I think the easiest. So by the way, this is a change they did with LinkedIn, and it kind of it connect with me. Don't just follow me, because if you connect with me, then you can DM me and I'll see it. And if you're a teacher, I always say yes. Then you can DM me and say I got a question. Or I don't use Twitter/X as much, but sometimes people find the ease of DMing there. I'm at Don Wettrick on both places. And then lastly, I should probably give you my email of the professional one, but it is long and you have a hard time jotting it down because it's at startedupfoundation.org. So if you want to, it's dwettrick at startedupfoundation.org. But if you're like, I can't write that down, it's dwettrick at gmail.com. I'll get it either way. So dwettrick at gmail, if that's what you want to do. And then, like, this is literally my job. I prefer working with teachers. If the schedule can fit it in, sometimes I'll do 15, 20-minute Zoom calls with your class. That's really where my heart is. I shouldn't say rather do that. I like to connect with your students as well, get them all hyped up for seeing problems as opportunities.
Outstanding. Wow. This has been a phenomenal episode. Don shared so many great gems. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you share it with a friend. Do not be selfish with this information and knowledge that Don dropped. And remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.